This is a video on equations quiz review that you have for homework tonight. Problem number 1. I see parentheses, so I know I'm going to distribute. If I have distribution, I have to draw the arrows to everything in the parentheses, and I have to distribute the -5 into everything. So -5 times +3 is -15x. -5 times -2, you have to include the symbol in front. A negative times a negative is a positive. 5 times 2 is 10 equals 40. Now I have a two-step equation. I'm going to move the plus 10 to be with its friend on the other side so I can isolate the x. To move it, you have to do the inverse operation, so -10 on both sides and cancel. Bring down the -15x equals, if I do 40 minus 10, I get 30. Still trying to isolate the x, and I need to get rid of -15. They're held together by multiplication, so I have to divide both sides to solve it. And I'm going to divide by everything I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of -15, so I have to divide by -15. This cancels. I'm left with x equals a positive divided by a negative. Positive to a negative gives you a negative. So that gives me -2. Question number 3, another problem similar to it. I'm going to distribute. Start by showing my multiplication with arrows. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times -5 is -10. That turns into -10 equals 12. And I have a two-step equation. I'm isolating the x, so I'm going to get rid of -10 first. The inverse operation is plus 10. I will do that to both sides. Bring down 2x. Bring down the equal sign. 12 plus 10 is 22. Still want to get x alone, so I know I've got to get rid of the 2. They are held together by multiplication, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x equals 11. Question number 3, we have a fraction. Fraction always tells us to divide. So I know the inverse operation of divide is to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So I'm going to flip the 2/3. I'm going to multiply by 3/2 on both sides. This cancels out, and we're left with x. Because I have 3/2 as a fraction, I'm going to make the 10 as a fraction and put a 1 under it. Then I can multiply the numerators and get 30, the denominators and get 2. To simplify that, 30 divided by 2 is 15, so x equals 15. Question 4, another two-step equation. I don't have to do anything with distribution. I'm going to start solving. I want to get x alone, so I'm going to get rid of -2 first. The inverse of -2 is plus 2. Bring down the -3x. Don't forget about the negative. 13 plus 2 is 15. I have -3 times x. To get rid of it, I have to divide by -3 on both sides. Bring down the x equals 15 divided by -3 is -5. Question number 5 has fractions in it. You guys tend to freak out when that happens, but we're going to take it one step at a time because you can do it. We're going to pretend like it's just regular numbers and start solving it the same way we normally would. We have the x we want to get rid of, so we're going to start by getting rid of plus 3/4. The inverse of plus 3/4 is minus 3/4. Draw a line and cancel. I'm going to bring down negative 5, 6x equals, and I have a common denominator, 4. So all I have to do is look at the numerators, 1 minus 3, and if I make a t-chart, they're on different sides, so I subtract, and it's going to be negative because 3 is greater. And I bring down my denominator. I still have a fraction, and a fraction always means division. And I'm still trying to get this x by itself, so I'm going to look at that side, and I'm going to notice that negative 5 over 6. So division means I have to multiply to get out of it. So I'm going to multiply both sides, and I'm going to show that by putting parentheses around both sides, and I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, because we have to do the opposite. So negative 6 over 5. Negative 6 over 5. These cancel, and I'm left with x equals, and now I have multiplication problems. I'm going to multiply straight across. I see that I have a negative 2/4 and a negative 6 over 5, so a negative times a negative gives me a positive. I know my answer is going to be positive. 2 times 6 is 12. 4 times 5 is 20. There's the 4 times 5. And I can simplify. I need to find a number that goes into 12 and 20, and it's going to be 4. Twelve divided by 4 is 3. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So I know my final answer, x equals 3/5. Question number 6 is a basic two-step equation. I'm going to draw a line down the equal sign. I'm going to solve by starting with getting rid of the minus 2. So I'm going to add 2 and cancel. Bring down the x divided by 12. 10 plus 2 is 12. I see I have a fraction, so I'm going to multiply. I'm going to multiply by, and if you want to think about multiplying by the reciprocal like we usually do, it's the same thing. If I put a 1 here, I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. That's 12 over 1, and that's the reciprocal of 1 over 12. So you're always multiplying by the reciprocal to get out of these problems. So multiply both sides by 12. So x equals 144. Question number 7. Another two-step equation. I'm going to start with getting rid of the minus 11 by doing plus 11 on both sides. And that cancels. I bring down the 2/5 x. 1 plus 11 is 12. I see a fraction, so I have to multiply. I have to multiply by the reciprocal. Reciprocal would be 5 over 2. And 5 over 2 on the other side as well. This cancels, so I'm left with x equals. I'm going to make 12 into a fraction by putting a 1 under it. And then I just have to multiply the top and then multiply the bottom. 12 times 5 is 60. 1 times 2 is 2. can simplify that. 60 divided by 2 is 30. So x equals 30. And finally, question number 8. I'm going to still try to get x by itself. I'm going to look that I need to get rid of the 6. To get rid of 6, I have to subtract 6. Because without a symbol here, it's a positive 6. I need to subtract 6 on both sides. And that cancels just the 6's out. So I have to bring down the negative 5x. Not just the 5x, but that minus sign has to come down as well. 11 minus 6 is 5. And now I have to divide both sides by what is with the x. And that would be negative 5. These cancel. I'm left with x equals. I have a positive divided by a negative. Sorry. A positive divided by a negative gives me a negative. So my answer is negative, and 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. Question 9 has decimals. We're going to do the same thing, even though it is decimals. We're going to draw a line down the equal sign. Trying to get x alone. So we're going to start by getting rid of plus 3.2. The opposite is minus 3.2 on both sides. Bring down the 1.5x. And I'm going to use my t-chart. They're both negative. I'm going to put them on the negative side. If they're on the same side, you add them together. When you're adding decimals, you line up the decimal and add as normal and bring the decimal down. 3 plus 2 is 5. 1 plus 3 is 4. So I get negative, because they're on the negative side, 4.5. I'm going to get rid of the 1.5, and because it's connected to the x through multiplication, the inverse operation will be dividing. So I'm dividing both sides by 1.5. I have x left over. Now I'm going to do a division problem. 4.5 divided by 1.5. When you're dividing decimals, on the outside you have to move the decimal over till it comes to the end. However many times on the outside I move the decimal, I have to move the same amount on the inside. So that means I have 15 going into just 45, and that's much easier for us. 15 goes into 45 3 times. So I come back up to my problem, bring down the equal sign. I have to remember I have a negative and a positive through division. So a negative and a positive gives me a negative. So negative 3 would be my answer. Question number 10. I'm going to look at the x that I want to isolate. And I notice the only thing I need to get rid of on this side is the 2/3. If I'm getting rid of 2/3, because fraction means division, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So that would be 3 over 2. That cancels, and I'm left with x. Bring down the equal sign. And we multiply the numerators and the denominators. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 2 is 12. But I can simplify. I know that 3 goes into both of those. So I'm going to simplify the top and the bottom by 3. And that gives me 15 divided by 3 is 5. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So my final answer is x equals 5 over 4, and I can leave it like that. I do not have to change it to 1 1/4, although that would still be mathematically correct. Number 11, I see that I have a fraction with a lot of stuff in the numerator and one thing in the denominator. So that means I'm going to multiply, because a fraction tells us to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by that denominator, which is -3. Everything that's in the denominator, so I have to multiply by -3 on both sides. This cancels, and I'm left with 2x minus 8 equals 8 times -3, a negative times a positive gives me a negative. That would be -24. Now I have a basic two-step equation. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. 2x equals, I'm going to make a t-chart. 24 is on the negative side. 8 is on the positive side. They're on different sides, so I'm going to find the difference between them, which would be 16, and it's negative because 24 is on the negative side and it is larger. So -16. Still trying to isolate the x, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x equals, x equals a negative, because it's a negative divided by a positive. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So x equals -8 would be your answer for number 11. Last one, number 12, is very similar to the one we just did. We have a big fraction. We're going to get rid of that fraction by multiplying everything by the denominator. This cancels, so we're left with -4x plus 26 equals 2 times 5 is 10. Then I have a regular two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 26 from both sides. I'm going to make a t-chart. 10 is on the positive side. 26 is on the negative side. So I'm going to find the difference. The difference would be 16, and it's negative because the 26 is larger, and it's on the negative side. So -4x equals -16. To finish the problem, I'm going to divide both sides by -4. I need to make sure I include the -4. Otherwise, I don't get rid of everything on the x side. That cancels. X equals, I have 2 negatives. Make my Dorito Sleepy Man up here. He's a sleepy Dorito. That's what I should call him. Negative divided by a negative equals a positive. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So x equals +4.